Our third privacy tort is called appropriation for commercial gain. And that is where you take usually a celebrity's likeness of some sort, or possibly their name, and you use it in some way to earn money. So perhaps you put somebody's picture on a t-shirt, or you print it on a box or packaging, or you make a chia pet out of Barack Obama. I'm sure he's not getting any royalties from this. So this would be appropriation. You're using their likeness to somehow get commercial gain. It's usually going to have to be somebody who's a celebrity, somebody who could make money from their own likeness. So if you want to use your own likeness on a t-shirt, that's fine. That's not a problem. The one defense that you would have to this is if they consented to it. So if they consented, then you are allowed to do that. You can use their likeness. And then our fourth privacy tort is something we call intrusion. It also is sometimes called seclusion. But what this is where you invade the personal affairs of someone else. So if you would read your roommate's email or read their personal mail, something like that, that would actually be the tort of intrusion. We are not allowed to intrude on people's private affairs. So we can't read their emails. We can't read their mail. Another place where this has come up is with wiretapping. So if the FBI or somebody wiretaps you without getting a warrant, then you could sue them for inclusion. They're not allowed to do that. Okay, so our next slide, those were the four privacy torts. So our next one is no longer a privacy tort, still a personal tort or a tort against persons, and it is false imprisonment. False imprisonment is when someone uses physical force or a threat of physical force, or they hold your property somehow, will not release it to you. So they do one of those things, and therefore you can't leave because you are either restrained by force, a threat of force, or your property is being held. They do not have to physically touch you. I know that she is doing that in this picture, but they could just lock you in a room. They don't necessarily have to touch you. We call this the shopkeeper's tort, and that is because it often comes up with people who are running retail businesses, so stores of all types run into this problem because they are worried about shoplifters. So they often detain people for shoplifting, and we're not going to just allow all of these people to sue for false imprisonment. So we have a standard here, and that is that shopkeepers may do that. They may detain people who they've suspected of shoplifting as long as they do it for a reasonable period of time and the questioning is reasonable. So we just use that reasonableness standard again, which, as you know, that is something a jury will decide whether or not it was reasonable. But we look at the length of time and the type of questioning. So as long as that was reasonable, it is perfectly fine for a store to detain you for a period of time. All right, our next intentional tort is what we call intentional infliction of emotional distress. This is a situation where somebody uses some really outrageous conduct, and we have a very high bar for outrageous conduct. So I'm not even sure that just dumping a bucket of water on someone would be outrageous enough, but you've done something outrageous, and because of that, the person has experienced some sort of emotional distress. It's really caused them problems. That is actually a tort, and they could sue you for damages under this tort of intentional infliction of emotional distress. Our final torts, intentional torts against persons, is misuse of legal procedure. This could come in the form of malicious prosecution or wrongful civil procedure. Those are basically the same thing. You're either in criminal court for malicious prosecution or civil court if you're having a wrongful civil proceeding. And that is, you're just suing someone for no good reason. There's no chance that you should win this. You have no chance of, there's no reason you should be pursuing this case at all. So that would be a tort that would come under misuse of legal procedure. The other one, which is probably more common, is what we call abusive process. An abusive process is when you use legal means, so you use a lawsuit to try to get somebody to do something else. So perhaps you want to force somebody to enter into a contract with you, or you want to force them to break a contract with you, or you want to force them to settle in another lawsuit. And to do that, you actually file a different lawsuit. You do something completely separate to force them to take an action somewhere else. This is not something that we allow. So if you would do that, you would be subject to being sued for abusive process. All right, so to sum up, our intentional torts against persons, we have assault and battery. Those often occur at the same time, so usually they are together. We then have defamation, which is libel and slander. We have our 4 privacy torts. And then we have false imprisonment, which, remember, we also called the shopkeeper's tort, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and finally the misuse of legal procedure.